Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to Newsroom. I'm your host, Khalid. But today is Friday, the 26th of May, 2023, and these are the stories that we will be discussing in detail during the course of our show. We'll begin with the G20 summit, the tourism part of that summit that was recently held in the Indian Hill Valley, and of course with the number of countries that did not attend it or sent a low-level representation has shown and proven that Pakistan's point of view that it has been reiterating all along has proven to have a diplomatic success, at least as far as this summit is concerned. We know the number of countries that have not attended it, whether it be the People's Republic of China, that was the first one to openly oppose it, whether it be the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. These two countries, of course, are members of this G20, but there are also other countries like Egypt or Oman that are guest countries but also did not come and attend it. This and more will be discussed during the first part of our show. G20 in an illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir, Pakistan's stance on the representation of the people of the Indian illegally held valley as far as their right to self-determination is concerned, and how does the world move forward post this summit that was recently held in the Indian Hill Valley. Our second story of the day, ladies and gentlemen, concerns the latest as far as the conflict between Russia and Ukraine is concerned. So many days have passed, but as far as the Russian sources are concerned and also the US sources, this war is nowhere near its end. This conflict seems to be going on and will continue to go on for more than a couple of months and could even go beyond a certain amount of years, as has been stated by certain quarters. What will be the repercussions on the world, on the region, if this does continue in the same vein? This will be part of our second story. Then we'll be talking about a California man, ladies and gentlemen, who has spent 33 years in prison for attempted murder, and now after 33 years in prison has now been declared innocent of his crimes that he supposedly had committed all those decades back. Justice delayed, but nevertheless not denied in this case. Let's begin with our first story, ladies and gentlemen, and that concerns Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir. Pakistan's diplomatic endeavors to highlight this on different fora, and how the G20 summit's diplomatic failure in the non-attendance of many countries will prove to be a game changer of some sort for the future of the people in the Indian Hill Valley. More in the following report.
India's presidency of the G20 group has been marred by controversies due to irresponsible tactics and tendency to politicize global forums for narrow political objectives. India's attempt to normalize its occupation of Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir has suffered a serious setback as a number of G20 countries refused to attend the moot in Srinagar. The decision by several nations to boycott the G20 event in the Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir highlights Pakistan's diplomatic success in encouraging the international community's concerns and firm stance against holding meetings in disputed territories. China in particular took the lead in boycotting the Srinagar G20 meeting, joined by countries like Turkey, Saudi Arabia, Indonesia and Egypt. The diplomatic setback for India reflects a growing solidarity with the oppressed people of Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir and raises questions about India's attempts to normalize its illegal hold on Kashmir. The boycott serves as a wake-up call for India to reflect on the reasons behind the international community's reservations and address the underlying issues surrounding the Kashmir dispute. The international community's support for the Kashmiri people and their refusal to attend the Srinagar G20 meeting is a clear demonstration of solidarity and Pakistan's robust diplomacy of highlighting Kashmir cause. The boycott signifies the growing concerns about the plight of the Kashmiri people and emphasizes the need for a just and peaceful resolution to the Kashmir dispute.
Now, to discuss this very important issue, we've been joined in the studios by Ambassador Najam Saqib. He's a foreign affairs expert and he is in the studios instead of on Skype. Thank you very much, Ambassador Sahab, to have joined us, and welcome to the studios in PTV World. We've been talking many a times online and now we are talking face to face. So it's a privilege for me, and thank you to have accepted the invitation.
Pleasure.
Let's begin with this G20 summit held in illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir. Pakistan had been highlighting it for a very long time that this was a disputed region as far as the UN resolution is concerned, and how can the G20 that consists of countries that are all part of the United Nations, be part of a summit and which becomes very contradictory in terms as far as the United Nations stance on this disputed region is concerned. But we saw some omissions. We saw the People's Republic of China, we saw Turkey that did not attend, and the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, all three that were members, and non-member states, guest states such as Oman and others also that did not, Egypt that did not attend. Does this send a clear signal to India or also to other countries that attended but should not have attended, that there needs to be a clear stance as far as the United Nations resolutions and following those resolutions is concerned?
Thank you very much, Omar. When you say Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir, this fact has been proved beyond any reasonable doubt by the abstention of all these countries that you have mentioned. The second thing which has backfired is that instead of attracting tourism and instead of establishing that this disputed territory is a part of India, that has also backfired. Now, as a diplomat, I am wondering what is going to be the response of the Indian Foreign Office to the Prime Minister Narendra Modi, that we wanted to establish certain things, and here it is, the situation is that by absenting themselves, important countries like China, Turkey, Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, they have given a message which is not liked by India, by any means. For instance, they have said that this is actually a disputed territory. Number two, India should not have held a small segment, let's say, of G20, because G20 is going to, the summit is going to be in September, then the Sherpas have to meet, the deputy ministers will meet, all these big meetings are going to be held in New Delhi. This particular small working group on tourism of G20, so these countries who are the actual members and certain, guest countries like you have mentioned, Egypt and Oman, somehow it has also come to the knowledge of India that at least these countries, it means about 40% of the members of G20 have refused to admit that this particular disputed territory is a part of India. So from every angle, as a diplomat, I can see the spot that the Foreign Office would be finding in New Delhi, how to counter this. Then the protests which were held in Indian illegally occupied Kashmir. Then the best part which goes in favor of the struggle, which goes in favor of the Kashmiris, which goes in every country including Pakistan, is that this particular dispute has been highlighted by India, who is the oppressor, of course, by default, because this has become now a talk of the town that why Saudi Arabia, okay, it's a Muslim country.
Why
Turkey,
China?
Why China? And why all these countries have, decided now, what other reason could be of their abstention? There is absolutely no other reason.
I totally agree.
So all these factors.
Another thing, Ambassador Sir, which I fail to understand is, you do a meeting on tourism, don't you? You do it in a disputed region. And secondly, you do it in an enclosed environment. There are drones flying all over. There is unlimited security everywhere. There is, people are not allowed to move freely. How can you, allow to have a G20 summit or a sub-summit under the G20 auspices on tourism under such circumstances?
There is no possibility. And I am surprised because Indians, as I know of them, they are very particular about the after effects, the aftermath, and all the pros and cons. They must have calculated. I think this was a move in haste. It has backfired, and all those countries which have, as you have very rightly mentioned, that the other countries which have attended this, particular working group meeting
have had a low-level representation.
They are not coming from their capitals. These capitals have asked their embassies based in New Delhi to attend this. It means that it is just, a way of saying that, okay, we are attending, but we are not happy We are not sending our particular officials of tourism for this working group. So from every angle it has backfired, and now I think September, there are still few months. India would be making another blunder if it tries even to hold any such multilateral or even bilateral or some official kind of conference or whatever in the Indian illegally occupied Kashmir.
I know that this is an embarrassment for India. We've discussed this right now. But is it also a diplomatic failure?
It is, of course. No. The thing is that the dispute of Jammu and Kashmir, Omar, the thing is that many people, even in Pakistan, they think that it is a problem between Pakistan and India and Kashmir. The disputed territory of illegally occupied Kashmir by India, the Kashmir dispute is an international issue. So when these countries, they have impliedly and expressly told India that it is a disputed country, and as you have mentioned about the United Nations relevant Security Council resolutions, it is still alive. And when in August, 5th August 2019, when they abrogated Article 370, they told everyone, the whole world, that this dispute is done and over with once and for all. As we speak now, on May 26th, 2023, not a single country in this world, of all the members of United Nations, none of them, not even Nepal, not even Sri Lanka, they have said that, okay, we accept this, abrogation of Article 370, we accept that this disputed territory now is a part of India. What does it mean? The issue is still alive, the dispute is there, the United Nations Security Council resolutions are still valid, according to which a plebiscite has to be held for the entire disputed area, for the people of Kashmir to decide as per their aspirations whether they want to be with Pakistan or India. So to say that it is a Pakistan problem, it is. Pakistan is the main party in it. But to me, the main party is the people of Kashmir. The main party are the people of the valley, Srinagar, Jammu, etc. Then Pakistan, because Pakistan has been and is. And, I can assure you, after serving the Foreign Office for 35 years, this is a state policy of Pakistan. And I must clarify here that governments come and go.
But this policy remains as such.
This is the policy of the state. And of course, we know the difference between state and government. Any government which comes, this is a state policy, and it is going to remain as such until and unless the people of Kashmir are able to get those aspirations translated into actual reality.
You talk of those aspirations translated into actual reality. How optimistic should one be of that happening? In the near future,
this is a question which normally people who don't know the real politic or geopolitics or geoeconomics or all these, or particularly those disputed territories. For instance, Kashmir is not the only disputed territory. If we talk about Europe, for instance, the United Kingdom and Spain, these are strong powers, strong countries. They have a problem of this particular area called Gibraltar. Now, there is Ukraine, there is this Azerbaijan and Armenia, and Nagorno-Karabakh is the problem. We have Palestine in Middle East.
Of course.
So, such issues where there are some die-hard, diametrically opposite views about a disputed territory, it takes time. This is one. Number two, the Kashmir dispute is not only a problem of a territory, it is a problem which has got, let's say, the human rights violation. It involves the Declaration of United Nations human rights, and what are they doing? I have no idea. Why they are silent? I have no idea. Why the world is talking about, let's say, one American or one Israeli, some human rights are infringed, and the whole world, here we see the biggest ever jail, the biggest ever jail in the history of the world is this disputed territory. Now, so not only territory, but there are other aspects attached to it, that a group of people, they are, their children can't go to school, The hospitals are not accessible. The basic rights, internet for instance, who can live without internet these days? Now their movement is curtailed, the expression, the freedom of expression, all kinds of freedom have been shunned to the people of illegally occupied.
They cannot say anything, they cannot tell the truth on any form of social media, because if they do, they'll be arrested. The freedom of expression, any freedom that a human being has been denied to them, not since now, but you know that very well, since many years. But the fact remains that this resolution, you say, Ambassador Saab, it will take time, but it has been more than 70 years now.
No problem. It has been, since 1948. The thing is, there is one big factor here. The world knows, you and I know, the United Nations resolutions are there. The United States of America, the entire European Union, they know. Russia knows, China knows, Turkey knows, everyone knows that this is a dispute and we have to address that. Why India is not being held accountable is a big question. And for that, the answer lies in India's importance in the world politics. You see this Quad, Australia, etc. Then you see India's position economically. It is the fastest growing economy in the world, the largest democracy of the world, etc. And it has got some certain other factors. For instance, China containment is the West's baby right now. They want to contain China through India. And India has been playing as a policeman of the entire South Asian region. Now these are very important factors which play their role in decision making of the West, that should we or should we not, because they think that if we annoy India on Kashmir, there would be some kind of a reaction which they don't want. They want India to keep playing the tunes of the West, China containment, etc. This is a sad fact. This is a sad fact, but this is reality. We have to accept that.
But under this whole situation of realities that you are portraying right now, who has the most responsibility? Is it Pakistan? Pakistan has been highlighting the Kashmir issue since time immemorial through various means. And then we have the Muslim world, we have the OIC, we have the SCO, we have the Arab League. Do you feel these organizations can play an important role? Because in the United Nations, the Security Council has members that will always veto any decision that is taken against India.
There is also a problem in this arena also. Let me highlight it. Ever since the inception of OIC, for instance, all these 56 countries, they are there in this, all Muslims. And in every possible resolution that they pass after any important conference, either at foreign minister level or at the head of state or head of government level, it mentions Kashmir, it mentions Palestine. And as we know that this OIC was actually established for the people of Kashmir, for Palestine, for the cause of Palestine. This was the main cause.
Of course.
Kashmir was included in it subsequently. The problem in OIC, and after highlighting it, I will give you a good news also about this. The problem is that all these countries, they have their independent foreign policies. For instance, UAE and Saudi Arabia, if you watch them closely, these are the important members of GCC, also OIC members. Let's say the last 3-4 years, we see that these have got out of the ambit or sphere of influence of the United States. They want to get out of it and see the world from their own individual perspective. Talking about Kashmir or Palestine, somehow the OIC would be passing resolutions, but on practical level, they will be, for the last at least 7 years, if Iran says something, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia will negate it. Not because it doesn't make any sense, because they were not friendly with Iran.
But
now the détente between KSA and Iran, this is going to be a paramount. This is a paradigm shift, and it is for the good of people of all those countries which are part of OIC, particularly Muslims at large. And I am hopeful that the next meeting of the OIC, let's say foreign minister level, or there are going to be certain, consensus and certain unanimity on certain issues. But there is a small little proviso here that when they talk about the bilateral relations, let's say between KSA and India, UAE and India, Egypt and India, Indonesia, Malaysia and India, they have their own economic concerns which restrict them not to oppose India openly.
All right. So you basically what you're trying to say is that there are geo-economic implications due to which a lot of countries that could have done more, that could have said more, are not doing because they feel that the repercussions from the Indian side could be detrimental to their own economy.
You are absolutely right. There are just two comments that I have to make right now. One is that since 1948 till today, India has tried to show to the world that this is an integral part. I'm leaving two questions here for you and for your millions of your viewers. Have you ever heard Narendra Modi or previous prime ministers or anyone spokesperson from New Delhi which says that, oh, New Delhi is an integral part of India?
It has never said.
Chennai, Bihar, Maharashtra is an integral part of India. Why only this disputed territory of Jammu and Kashmir that they have to say that it is an integral part of India? Because they know themselves
that it isn't.
It is. This is one. Number two, Pakistan's efforts, the Foreign Office, Pakistani diplomats and our other related institutions, due to our efforts against all odds, this particular dispute is alive. And as Arundhati Rai said that Kashmir doesn't want liberty or freedom from India, it is now India which wants freedom, liberty from Kashmir.
Well, on those very sane words and very intelligent words, we'll end our discussion. It was wonderful to have you, Ambassador Saqib, in the studios and to discuss of all issues, this very important issue that is of Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir and of Pakistan's efforts to highlight the issue and of diplomatic failure and embarrassment that India has had to face because of the non-attendance of many key countries. Thank you very much, sir, to have come all the way, and inshallah talk to you very soon on other important topics. Let's come to our second segment, ladies and gentlemen, that concerns the Russia-Ukraine conflict, day 457, ladies and gentlemen. Many a thing happening, and of course we all know the tension that exists between the West and the East. How is it all going to board along? More in the following report.
The conflict in Ukraine has dramatically changed the world and is shaping future of Europe and global security order in decisive manner. The intense fighting around the eastern city of Bakhmut has been the longest and bloodiest in more than a year-long Ukraine conflict, which has devastated swaths of Ukraine and displaced millions of people. Russia appeared close to taking control of Bakhmut this week, although Ukraine said it continued to fight on in the southwest fringes of the city, of largely devastated by an intense year of deadly fighting. The Battle of Bakhmut has increasingly been the focal point of the war. Now its 65th week. Bakhmut was first shelled in May 2022, and Russian forces consistently targeted the mining city that had a pre-war population of about 70,000. Although not considered of particular strategic value, the city has acquired a high symbolic value of both sides in the conflict. Western arms supplies to Ukraine reached another inflection point this week as United States President Joe Biden backed the joint allied training of Ukrainian pilots on F-16 fighter jets. The G7 signed off on new sanctions against Russia, targeting its energy, metallurgical, technology and defense industry. With fighting raging on and no peace talks on horizon, Ukraine conflict has become most challenging geopolitical flashpoint which threatens to escalate great power tensions.
Dr. Amina Mehmood, who is a foreign affairs expert, joins us in the studio as well. Dr. Saiba, pleasure to have you here after quite some time. We are discussing, of course, the Ukraine-Russia conflict, day 457 of all days. And as far as the different statements that are coming from the Russian side, from the US side, doesn't see any slowing down. We don't see an end in sight. A lot of people are saying that it might take years for the conflict to continue. There might be a thaw, then there will be a resumption. Why do both sides want this conflict to continue for such a long time? What are the benefits that the sides have?
Omar, obviously it's a matter of interest. Thank you so much for having me.
Pleasure,
last time
pleasure.
we were talking about the same Ukraine conflict, and we discussed that this is endless because it's a matter of interest of both superpowers. Rather, it's a matter of survival for having the status of superpower. United States claims itself as the sole superpower, the only strategic power that can controls the world, while Russia is actually the revisionist power. So it's very critical for both to assert their status. US pose itself as unchallengeable, while Russia is reclaiming its status that that is the revisionist power rising and successor of USSR again. And for Ukraine, it's a matter of respect for Russia, because that was former part of Soviet Union and they were together once, and for Ukraine they have won number of times to Europe and US that don't expand NATO to their frontier. That's why it's a matter of, and it's when both powers are egoistic, it's hardly
it's also a matter of money, it's also a matter of economy. More than $65 billion US have been given to Ukraine since this conflict started by the countries in the West. 65 billion that could have been used to alleviate poverty in so many countries, that could have been used for Afghanistan, that could have been used for other countries alleviated by, affected by climate change such as Pakistan. But all that money is going only in one direction, and that is Ukraine. Don't you feel that this is also causing an economic imbalance or geo-economic imbalance?
Omar, that is one aspect which we think as a developing nation. You see that $65 billion is a peanut when you see that $285 billion deal that US is going to do with Ukraine. They are going to sell those arms, not donating them. So they have spent then they are earning 285, and it's the US military industrial complex that is in, they are having benefit of all that. But the war is very costly for the humanity. You see that the last the last city Russia conquered, there was a population of 70,000 and there is hardly anybody left. I was just looking at the BBC reporting that there is hardly anybody left. It means that they have just eroded all the population from this earth. And it is actually the Ukrainian people who are suffering. The whole world is having their proxies. And it is the war of, apparently it is the war of white world, Western world, but it is not. You see that they have given just lip service. Starting from 2014 when they annexed Crimea, Russia, there was no response from the Western world. They did not oppose that even in the UN. And then they annexed two small areas, autonomous regions of Ukraine, and there was no concrete reaction. It shows that they were actually provoking, or they were actually giving leverage to Russia that they can advance and we will keep quiet. As it happened in case of Iraq, this is the superpower politics.
All right. Speaking of the superpower politics, I'd like to refer to two comments made by General Mark Milley, who is the chairman of the U.S. Joint Chiefs of Staff. He has said, A, Russia will not achieve a military victory in Ukraine, and Kiev's forces are unlikely to push back Russian troops from the territory anytime soon. B, he has said that Russia's original strategic objectives, including toppling the government in Kiev, are not achievable militarily. What are your comments on these two statements?
I think almost every strategic expert would say the same.
All right.
That there is no military solution. You have seen that in Afghanistan there was no military solution. In
2
case
decades
of
later,
Vietnam,
we had to.
in case of Korea, in case of Iraq, Syria, Libya, there is no military solution. You have to come on the negotiation table. US spent $7 trillion in Afghanistan. If they would have spent $1 trillion on the rehabilitation of Afghan society and economy and the people, it would have been a heaven on the earth. But they are not following this, they are not learning this lesson.
Maybe their strategic interests are different.
Yeah. Strategic interests are actually, which I mentioned earlier, that US want to maintain its status as the sole superpower. Russia is reclaiming, and the whole world is the victim. And EU was worried, but EU did nothing to save Ukraine getting into real war. Real war, because real war is something which is the music you are facing, who are fighting actually. And it is it was not according to the capacity of Ukraine being a smaller power to fight a superpowered army of Russia, but they were looking at that, and still you see that US is claiming that they are not going to win, but still they were thinking that whether they can sell F-16 to Ukraine or not.
They are. I mean, this is what I've. This is the latest information that the F-16
Omar,
will be
you
going.
can imagine that how much human life would be taken during that period. During the period when Ukrainian pilots would get training to fly those F-16.
That is why I am saying that this is a very long drawn out conflict and sees no sign of abating any way whatsoever. You talked about the European Union. Let's talk about the European Commission that calls on China to play a constructive role as far as this conflict is concerned. We know that China's envoy Li Hu is on a tour of Europe that began in Kiev. Do you feel China can play some kind of a constructive role? We know about this 12-point agenda that had been, talked about by the Chinese side as far as the resolution of this conflict is concerned. Can something happen? We've seen the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and Iran get together because of Chinese efforts. Can China also prove to be that middle ground for Ukraine and Russia?
I think that there is a possibility, we cannot predict at this stage, but I don't think that China is having a will and capacity, both. Because as far as will is concerned, you see that China was the sole supporter of Russia when they attacked, and they were warned many times by the United States and European Union as well. And in terms of material support, there was only power China supporting Russia, and they provided number of support in number of terms, militaries, moral, in UN, etc. But I think that China is having at this time alliance with Russia, and they both are working to shift the balance of power that we call it in IR, the transition of power to Asia. And a major part of Russia is in Asia. And since in 1960s, US was able to divide Russia and China, Soviet Union and China into different camps, but they are united again because their interests are common. They are sitting together in SCO, they are sitting in BRICS, and they are all going on de-dollarization of their economies and number of other economies, prominent economies of the world. In case of Saudi Arabia and Iran, China is having convergence of interest because both are on the route of BRI and they wanted to have peace in those regions. They have
that was a breakthrough. That was a diplomatic breakthrough.
And that was, a very wise step taken by MBS and Iranian government as well.
Now let's go towards the Russian side. We've got a Russian former President Dmitry Medvedev, who's a key ally of Mr. Putin, who says Moscow's war in Ukraine could continue for decades. I'll quote what he said: "This conflict will last for a very long time, most likely decades." The second comment that I'd like to have your opinion on is Belarusian President Alexander Lukashenko, who says that there are some tactical weapons that are being relocated from Russia to Belarus. And then we've got also statements from the Russian side saying that there is a possibility of the use of nuclear weapons. These three issues combined, what is the Russian side thinking in order to progress to the next phase of this conflict? Do you feel that high-grade weaponry could be used in the future? Do you feel the use of nuclear weapons is a possibility? And as Mr. Medvedev said, do you feel this conflict is going to continue for decades?
What I perceive at this point of time, more intake taken from US and European Union. We see that the Mr. President of Ukraine traveled to 4 countries, and then he presented himself to G8 as well, and then G7 as well. It was G8 before Russia was included, and G7, and he was assured of number of support, and in terms of not only moral but also in terms of weapons by Germany and UK especially. And you see that more input by European Union and US, more response would come, and Russia threatened that our response would be very severe, and you have to face it. And at the same time, you see that they are already using most lethal weapons in Ukraine, and Ukraine has no reply because they are of not having of that much grade which is possessed by Russia. And at the same time, they are threatening US that your weaponry cannot be used against us, otherwise we will respond. And you have seen the statement of for State Department of US that don't use our weapon directly against Russia. To whom they would use,
of course,
against whom they would use. These are the ironies. And actually what I perceive that this is the time for military industrial complex of all top 5 Russian, top 5 weapon suppliers of the world, including from European Union and United States. They are making money. And you see, but this war is probably continue, because you see that Mr. Biden is losing its strength in Senate and in House of Representatives in the midterm election, and he has lost control over in the American Congress, and most probably it is possible that he would be replaced in next presidential election, just because he is getting unpopular on the basis of mass banning in the Ukrainian war, which is a futile war. So if all these powers would not understand the need of sitting together, negotiations and peaceful process, certainly this war can continue like Afghanistan.
But Dr. Amina, there is not only the repercussion of an armed conflict between these two states, but there is also the repercussion on food security, there is a repercussion on gas, on oil, and so many, and of course the general human lives as well that we've discussed a bit before. Now Russia has summoned the ambassadors of Germany, Sweden, Denmark to protest what it calls a complete lack of results as far as the investigation into the Nord Stream pipeline blast is concerned. Why is there why are there is there a delay as far as this investigation is concerned? Is this deliberate?
It's deliberate, or it can be they don't want to reveal the results, in fact, because they are suspecting that it is done by Ukraine. Because these European powers were not responding, they were more dependent on these supplies from Russia. So they did that, and in return what Europe has to do, they have to come back to Ukraine for support, but they are again miscalculating. I think that they would go to alternate source of gas and oil towards Middle East, because Middle East is now more open, and they are also lowering their prices despite American influence. They are lowering their price, and there you see that in OPEC Russia is also a member, and they have found proxies through India. India is buying cheaper oil from Russia, and they are selling again to the Europe, and Europe has crossed one winter with the energy.
But how many winters can it pass? I mean, without the proper cooperation with the Russian side as far as gas, as far as oil is concerned? Because over 1, 2, 3, 4 winters are fine. What happens when it passes that 4 or 5 or 6 winters?
It is the capacity of European economies basically that how they respond. I think that longer war would be beyond tolerance of Europe, because they have passed First and Second World War, and due to the fear of Third World War, they made European Union. And still, despite having number of differences and number of irritants, they are maintaining EU because they want to avoid third world war. And if Ukraine crisis in the heart of the Europe would continue, certainly the burden would be on their economies, their people, and then there would be burden on social securities, and ultimately that would be reflected on the politics of their respective countries. Their parties and governments would be unpopular.
That is so true. I mean, such a complex situation, this conflict, and as you said, it's also a war of egos. But who suffers at the end of the day? It is the normal people, those millions and millions of people that are suffering. And in the long run, the amount is going to increase as more and more states join in the conflict, whether by proxy or otherwise. And ultimately, it will the world that will, be a victim because of all the crises that are going to be emanating as a result of that. We've also already seen the wheat shortage. We've seen other crises as well. Who knows what could happen in the future? But thank you so very much, Dr. Amina, to have come and to have discussed this conflict. All we want is that any conflict, whether it be the Kashmir dispute, the Palestinian dispute, or this dispute ends. The world needs to be a place where we can go anywhere and have heave a sigh of relief and live peacefully. And I think
for humanity.
Exactly. I think
Safe for
this is
humanity.
the responsibility of all governments to make this world a safer place to live. Thank you very much, Dr. Amina, to have joined us. Let's come to our very last segment, ladies and gentlemen. And that concerns a California man who has spent 33 years in prison for attempted murder. He has now been declared innocent and freed after it emerged that he was not even at the scene of the attack. Daniel Saldana, he is now 55 years of age, was convicted in 1990 of opening fire on a car leaving a high school football game in Baldwin Park, east of Los Angeles. Now, investigations began in February after the district attorney's office learned that another convicted attacker had said that he was not involved in it. But now, finally, after the intervention of the authorities, 33 years later, he is now a free man. Justice delayed, but justice not denied. With that, we come to an end of today's newsroom. We'll see you, inshallah, on Friday with news stories that pertain to us, you, and Pakistan. Stay safe. Have a great weekend. Allah Hafiz.